So over the last few days, America has decided to pull out of Afghanistan after over 20 years of faking gay nonsense called the War on Terror, which, of course, is a Zionist-orchestrated plan to destabilize the Middle East for Israel's benefit that began being planned in probably around the 1970s, but that's a topic for a different video. But America announced its withdrawal from Afghanistan, and within 24 hours, the Taliban took over the capital city and is now basically in control of the government. And to that, I say, based? Now, I'll explain this more towards the end, but I think this whole thing is another psyop and everything we're seeing from all sides is completely planned. But either way, it's still awesome. So the BoomerCon reaction to all of this, of course, is to blame Biden and Democrats, which makes no sense because they were all for pulling out when Trump wanted to. And the Democrats are somehow blaming Trump and are bringing up the Taliban peace deal he made, which a page that was praising that deal was removed from the GOP website, which is pretty funny. So bottom line is that the two-party system is still gay and water is still wet, but both sides do not like the Taliban. So, when you start posting memes saying how awesome it is that the Taliban has taken power, both sides freak out and it makes me very, very happy.
I'm sorry for dripping, but drip is what I do. And one of these days I'm gonna get dressed and drip all over you. I'm that flyer nigga, little baby, can't you see? Your style is on my fashion coat, tell me who drip like me.
So America basically implemented a cringe democratic fake president in Afghanistan, and of course they wanted to make it more liberal and give women and gays rights and a whole bunch of other satanic nonsense, as is American tradition. But as soon as America leaves, all of their efforts completely collapse and the Taliban take over in a day with nearly no violence. And actually, the transition of power was actually more peaceful than the transition of power in America. And then, so the Taliban comes into power and destroy everything that the American regime has accomplished in the last 20 years, which is awesome because it just shows what a waste it's been. We came into a country where we weren't welcome and tried to force a way of life on them that they didn't want, and it cost us billions of dollars and thousands of American lives, and we accomplished absolutely nothing. Now, the Taliban takes over, and they ban abortions, gay marriage, vaccines, they remove the separation of church and state, and force religion to be taught in schools. Now, besides it being the wrong religion, all of that seems based, and honestly, we need those policies in America, just a Catholic version, so I fully support those policies over the international neoliberalism that global homo American empire perpetuates. Now, you say this, and people have a mental breakdown. How could you support these radical Islamo-fascists? You're anti-American, blah, 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 blah. No. I am not anti-American. I am anti-American government. People conflate being pro-American with being pro-American government when that's the furthest thing from the truth. The American government hates the American people. They are our enemy. The Taliban is not our enemy. The Taliban doesn't control our banks or the porn industry. It doesn't promote mass immigration or gay marriage or any other form of degeneracy in our country. How exactly is this military faction thousands of miles away from us our problem? In fact, the only reason Islam is a problem at all in the West is because our government allows them into our country. We bomb Muslim countries to benefit Israel, who they hate, which makes them hate us. These bombings then create refugees, and then the same lobbying groups who support Israel and these wars tell us that it's our moral prerogative and obligation to accept these refugees. So now we have hundreds of thousands of these people who hate us coming to our country because they have nowhere else to go. And then we wonder why there's a conflict with Islam within our country. But the Taliban violates human rights and they're on a jihad against Christians and they oppress them. Somebody actually said that to me. First of all, human rights are fake and gay, made up silly goose nonsense, so that literally has no meaning. And do you think that every Muslim is just engaging in violent jihad against Christians and killing them at will? No. From what I've seen, it seems like most religious minorities under Taliban rule, they are oppressed, but it's usually in the form of taxation or they're just second-class citizens who are expected to respect the dominant culture. And while I don't want any Christians to be oppressed, obviously, unless they're Protestants, it's a Muslim country. And like any nation, the minorities of that country should respect the dominant culture. And besides all of that, it's not America's concern. We have Christians, especially white Christians, being treated as second-class citizens right here in our own country. How about we worry about them instead of what's potentially happening thousands of miles away? Somebody compared the January 6th Capitol storming to the Taliban seizing power in Afghanistan. Yeah, a couple of unarmed boomers strolling into the Capitol and taking selfies while accomplishing nothing but ruining their lives is the same thing as the Taliban armed with massive amounts of guns literally taking over the government by force. These people are mentally ill. But didn't the Taliban carry out the 9/11 terrorist attacks? No, not at all. That is a common misconception, but you're confusing the Taliban with Mossad. And a lot of boomer tiers just think every Islamic organization like cuts off people's heads and tortures everyone for fun. They think that the Taliban is the same as Al-Qaeda, and they think that like Al-Qaeda is the same as ISIS, etc., but that's not the case at all. ISIS is a CIA-funded Israel invention that were just slaughtering everyone who disagreed with them at will, specifically to pump out pro-intervention propaganda. The Taliban is a guerrilla militia faction that became the dominant faction after the Afghan Civil War and was actually supported by and partly funded by America to fight against the Soviets. The Taliban actually ruled over 2/3 of Afghanistan until December 2001, when the Judeo-Anglo War on Terror began. Now, all of that being said, the Taliban obviously still sucks. Part of these memes that we're showing like support for Taliban are just provocation to get normies mad because it's really funny. But there is some truth to saying that they're based in a lot of areas, and people who lack nuance can't seem to grasp this idea that you can suck in a lot of ways but be awesome in others. Yes, the Taliban are cringe and do a lot of disgusting, barbaric stuff. Assuming it's not all Western propaganda, they have sex with goats, rape women, engage in human trafficking, they've massacred civilians, and worst of all, they're not Catholic. But like I said, they shouldn't be our problem. We have enough to worry about in our own country. It is not our obligation to police the morality or culture of any other country, especially when our own nation is in complete and total disarray. And despite the Taliban's savagery, compared to the American government, the Taliban are saints. And the fact that they are disrupting American Globoh homo and exposing Western degeneracy, and best of all, making boomers and libtards seethe, is a win in itself. So it's not about supporting radical Islamists, it's about being against the American government. It'd be like if a rapist killed a pedophile. You would say, oh, that's based of the rapist for eating a kitty fiddler, but that doesn't make you by default a pro-rapist. Now, all of this being said, and as funny and white-pilling as I find this, I'm still realistic and I know how our government works, and there's an extremely large possibility that this is all planned and is just a complete psyop. And even if it wasn't planned, they will still use it to their advantage. Our government basically plans out ways to get to the New World Order faster while also having contingency plans where if things don't go exactly according to plan, they will use it to their advantage. So basically, it is irrelevant whether or not our government knew that if we pulled out now, that the Taliban would do this, because either way, it'll work out for them. If Afghanistan remained a gay liberal democracy, then that's another puppet state we have to do our bidding and can easily control. But if it collapses like it is currently, and I think this is completely by design, honestly, then we can pump out propaganda showing how horrible things get when America isn't there to save the day and to help out. And then maybe we can get more support to have further intervention and start a new war, as well as just using it to justify bringing in more refugees, which is what you're seeing now. And we can also use it to cause further conflict among Americans who can argue about foreign topics that have nothing to do with America. So basically, no matter what, this works out for the evil American regime. But that being said, I still think it's awesome, and I'm so over the smoke and mirror show that is American politics that it's basically just entertainment to me now. None of this is ultimately important. What's important is Jesus Christ and protecting and providing your family. That's pretty much it. So yeah, that's my take on this whole Taliban thing. Have babies, don't do drugs, praise Christ, and avoid degeneracy and high interest loans.
They've just told me to stand to the side because I'm a woman.